Looking for the freshest wild salmon in Portland? Meet Kenai Redfish Company. They're a family-owned business based in Northeast Portland, and every summer, they head up to Alaska's Cook Inlet to sustainably fish for wild salmon. At this very moment, they're doing what they do best, reeling in wild salmon that could be headed straight to your freezer. Kenai Red works just like a CSA, but for wild Alaskan fish. Use CityCast15 for $15 off your salmon share today at KenaiRed.com. That's KENAI Red.com. Fish that's caught for you, real fish from real people. Biketown makes it easy to explore the city on an e-bike or a scooter. All you have to do is find the nearest available bike or scooter using the Biketown or Lyft app, scan the QR code on your set of wheels, and you're on your way. One beautiful waterfront ride is a 5-mile loop from the Steel Bridge to the Tillicum Crossing, the largest car-free bridge in the world. New riders can use CityCast25 for a free unlock. For more info, go to biketownpdx.com. As Portlanders, we all know about the looming threat of the big one and the ongoing danger of wildfires across our state. But recently, another potential natural disaster has shown up in the headlines. Portland is sinking. So today on CityCast Portland, science journalist Aaron Ross is joining us on the show to talk about why our city is sinking and how much we should actually be concerned. It's Tuesday, July 8th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. So, Aaron, why is Portland sinking? What's causing this?
Well, so it really is sinking not a lot at a time. But before I tell us why it's sinking, I want to just quickly hit on how we know that Portland is sinking at all. So about a month ago, researchers from 3 universities, Columbia, UC Irvine, and Virginia Tech, published a study in Nature Cities. And what they did is they used satellite survey data to look at land rise and fall across the 28 largest cities in the US, and Portland's one of them. So it's one part of a much bigger study. And there's a lot of different ways that cities can sink, but according to this study, 3 of them are impacting Portland. So the first is seismic. And so that would just be your faults and earthquakes, right? Because they build mountains up and they can dig canyons, and so they can impact elevation. And there's a lot of fault lines here in the Northwest. The second is something called non-glacial isostatic adjustment, or GIA, and it's the way that the shape of the land is changing now that Ice Age glaciers are gone. So you'd think that without glaciers, everything would pop up because there's nothing pushing on them anymore. But if you think of a ball of Play-Doh or a tub of Play-Doh, and your thumb is the glacier and you push your thumb in, when you push it on one spot, other spots are going to come up around it to make room. And then if you take your thumb out and the glacier melts, all of it starts evening back out. And so that's what's happening right now. And Portland was pushed up by glaciers, so now it's sinking down a little bit. The thing is, though, that both of these two things they're kind of moving big chunks of land all the same. So it's not really bad if all of Portland moves an even amount down or an even amount up, right? So the third reason is the most important, and that is soil compaction. And basically, buildings are really heavy, and Portland's built on really squishy soil, and over time, it's going to smoosh. And that, matters the most because it doesn't happen evenly. So, some parts can smoosh more than others, and that can cause problems with buildings.
Right. So I'm hearing it, and it sounds like it's normal, it's a normal thing that happens. So are other cities also sinking at a similar rate? Or I'm assuming Mexico City is a city that is rapidly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sinking very fast. I'd call the type of sinking that Portland experiences normal. On average, Portland is only sinking 0.922 millimeters a year. I know that Americans can't conceptualize metric. I can't. So putting that into imperial, it would sink an inch about every 27 and a half years. Seems like a big number, but it's also not too much when you compare it to other cities that have abnormal sinking going on. And in Oregon, the only real problem causing the sinking that's caused by us is soil compaction. But then if you look at, say, Houston, Texas, or Phoenix, or probably the most famous example of land subsidence or sinking is the Central Valley in California, where parts of it have sunk over 30 feet in 100 years.
Whoa.
That's insane. And that's because they're pulling all of this groundwater out of the earth. And then with nothing there to hold this floating earth up, it sinks. And that's happening in Texas. Parts of Texas are sinking an inch a year. So like what it takes us 27 and a half years to do, parts of Houston can do in a single year. And
it's Houston?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's populated parts of Houston too that are sinking the fastest.
That is scary. Because I know Mexico City has been sinking rapidly because they built on water.
On top of a lake, yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. But, like, the lake in Houston's underground.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah. And also, like, oil extraction in that area. Like, most of Texas's major cities are sinking because you're just sucking stuff out of the ground. And what's left?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
What could go wrong? Well, I want to get into what that means for our infrastructure safety. But first, let's take a quick break. Freelancing or running your own business can feel like freedom and a trap all at once. Grinding day in and day out with no benefits, no savings for retirement, no safety nets, and let's not even talk about what's happening with the tax side of things. That's why Guilds with Benefits was created by freelancers to flip the script, because safety should not mean giving up on your dreams. Guilds with Benefits allows qualified freelancers and small business owners to join their payroll as W-2s while still keeping their independence. Guild members get great medical, dental, and vision insurance, automated tax deductions and compliance, paid time off, 401k with a 3% match, financial security, and so much more. If you're earning over $60,000 a year and are tired of doing it alone, visit guildswithbenefits.com so you can get back to doing the things you love.
CityCast Portland is brought to you by D'Amour Law Group. Let's face it, sometimes bad stuff happens. A serious injury, a catastrophic accident, or even a wrongful death. It can turn your world upside down. When it does, you deserve unwavering support from a dedicated team. Yep, you need a lawyer. D'Amour Law Group has over 30 years of experience protecting the rights of Oregonians. Their team of skilled attorneys, led by distinguished trial attorney Tom D'Amour, will work tirelessly to make sure your voice is heard and your rights are protected. Here's what one of his clients said. Tom fights for his clients from the first day they meet him through the last day of trial. If you or a loved one needs help holding those responsible for your injuries accountable, contact D'Amour Law Group at 503-222-6333 or visit d'amourlaw.com to schedule a free consultation. They are committed to fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve right here in Portland.
All right, so Portland is sinking what it sounds like in a very minuscule amount, but still, does this mean I should be worried about my foundation? Like, how big of a threat is it for the safety of buildings?
I think it's kind of not a threat. Like, I don't want to downplay this entirely, because even really small changes in elevation can do things, put cracks in foundations, destabilize buildings, and like really big changes can do things like take down bridges. The Selwood Bridge was replaced because a really slow, like really slow landslide on the west side was kind of pushing up against the bridge, changing the elevation, and that was causing it to become unstable and crack. So like, we can see these things happening. But as I said before, like most of the sinking that we experience here is pretty even. And the type of sinking that's really bad in this study is something called angular momentum, which is how much a spot is sinking relative to its neighbors. And we don't really have a lot of that going on in most of Portland. So like if you build a house in Portland right now, it's probably going to settle more in the first few years than it's going to sink in like the decade or two following. Yeah, so the impacts of ground structure on subsidence here are really minimal. And like, while they can add up over time, we also kind of have to keep in mind that like, if we're thinking about how much the ground here is going to change in 25, 50, 75 years, we also have to look at like the Cascadia earthquake that's going to move things a whole lot more on a 50 to like 100-year timescale. We don't need to worry about our bridges crumbling from like ground subsidence. We have to worry about them crumbling from earthquakes. And the good news is that like buildings and bridges that can survive earthquakes can also survive like a millimeter a year of movement, you know?
Could you imagine? I could survive an earthquake, but just a subtle sinking. Oh,
just give it
gone.
a flick and it crumbles.
Yeah. So what areas are most impacted by this in Portland?
Yeah, so there's actually some pretty cool maps from this study. But if you look at figure A in that map, can you tell me what you're seeing in there?
In figure A, it's pretty much, it's all lit up.
And so
it's
green,
everywhere.
Things that are green are rising just a little bit.
Okay.
Things that are kind of yellowy green are sinking 0 to 1 millimeters a year. And then when you start seeing orange and red, that's sinking up to 6 millimeters a year.
Gotcha.
87% of Portland is sinking a little bit, but most of it's happening on the 0 to 0.5 scale. But then if you look up around St. John's, right, there's a fair amount of red, or in it Hayden Island, there's some red, along the Columbia, kind of along the Willamette and Swan Island, and then some stuff going on in the Southwest Hills that's probably just very slow landslides happening.
Right. Well, how does this all relate to rising sea levels? Because we got that going on as well.
Right, exactly. And so if you look at those areas that are sinking a lot, right, that's kind of where the soil's squishiest, that's right along the river. And I know that we think of ourselves as being inland, and we are, but the Columbia only changes 10 feet between the ocean and where it meets the Willamette. So it is influenced by the tides. The Willamette in Portland and the Columbia change about 2 feet by the tides a day. And so things like sea level rise are going to be raising that up just a little tiny bit. And that might not seem like a big deal, but when you are maybe in a near flood stage, that extra 3 to 5 inches that we might see, that's our worst case scenario for sea level rise in the next 50 or so years out here. And that can be pretty significant.
Yeah, and when I'm looking at this, it really is all the docks, basically anything. South Portland looks not great.
No.
South Portland. Just FYI, South Portland and possibly some of Selwood.
The thing is, though, if you were to zoom in on this, what you would actually see is a lot of these places that are sinking the most don't have a lot of people in them. And you look at Southwest, it's got a lot of sinking. But then look at the next map. So this map is of angular distortion. And that's how much, again, each spot's sinking relative to the place next to it. Yellow means it's totally fine. Basically nothing is changing. A little bit of orange means it's moving 2 to 4 degrees difference. And then it's when you get into the dark orange and the red that it's bad. And if you look at this, it's just all yellow. This entire map is yellow with some sprinklings, they salted some orange onto it. So there's not a lot of angular distortion happening. And then the final map below that, what they did is to make a risk map, they crossed that with population. Anything that's blue is very low risk. So that means not a lot of people are living there. There's not a lot of subsidence, and there's not a lot of angular momentum. Out of the almost 130,000 buildings they were able to survey in this, only 500 are in the high or very high category. And basically no people.
Yeah.
Very, very few people live in these areas, these little teeny spots of red that are almost nothing. There's only 28 buildings in the very high category on this, and they're all on Hayden Island.
Right.
So,
well, we'll definitely be linking to these maps if you're curious and you want to see this. It'll be in our show notes. But what I'm hearing is that there's not much to be worried about.
Yeah.
But well, let's take a quick break here, because when we get back, I want to talk about why I've been seeing reports holy crap, Portland is sinking. And so, I don't know. It feels a little like we're debunking something here.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a quick break.
Shop 4th of July savings at the Home Depot right now and get up to 40% off, plus up to an extra $600 off select appliances with free delivery, like Samsung. From all-in-one washer dryers to smart refrigerators, upgrade to tech you can trust with Samsung appliances. The Home Depot has what you need to simplify your routine. Don't miss 4th of July appliance savings at the Home Depot. Free delivery on appliance purchases of $396 or more. Offer valid June 18th through July 9th. U.S. only. See store or online for details.
Paradise is back
It's finally here.
in a new location, Costa Rica. There will be adventure, drama, and romance,
All gas, no brakes. That's my vibe.
Ready to find some love.
but it wouldn't be paradise without surprises along the way.
These kids need to learn.
That's right. Your favorite Golden alums are crashing the beach.
We bring in a party, baby.
Bachelor in Paradise. New Mondays at 8, 7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
So why do you think reporters are, giving us these dire headlines. Are they doing this on purpose? Do you think they just got something wrong? Like, is this common? I know you're a science reporter, you're a science journalist instructor. Like, is this common from what you've seen?
Well, I mean, I think some of it is like we both worked in newsrooms, right? And we know that like reporters are working on really tight deadlines. They might not have a lot of time to like spend time reading papers. So that can always be like one factor. And unfortunately, stories like this where things end up wrong are more common than we'd probably like them to be, or things are kind of taken out of context, especially for science stories. As we know, like, it's kind of a tough time for the news ecosystem, and like science reporters are usually some of the first to get cut. It's like science and arts, that's who they cut first. And papers aren't easy to read. They take time and they take practice, and you have to know where to look. Like, those maps that we just looked at aren't in the main body of the paper. Those are if you like dig down really deep in the supplemental material, and you have to even know that there's supplemental material to have, and you have to scroll through like past the citations, it's past the acknowledgments. This is like the very, very bottom of the page that most people don't even think to look for, right?
You're talking about the scientific papers, the research behind it.
Yes, the research, the scientific research that these are written about. So that's kind of part of it. And I also think the places that wrote about this are places that are kind of associated with national networks. And I was wondering if maybe like, you know, somebody in Houston wrote about this and they're like, oh, by the way, Portland's in this study too. So they like,
they just like, roped us in. They're just like, Houston is sinking. Portland, did you know you're sinking too? And it's like, yeah, it's such a minuscule amount.
Yeah, it's like, it's happening, but it isn't necessarily happening. So that's one idea. There's also some like kind of weird errors that I've seen in some of the coverage of this. Like a lot of places said that like 80% of Portland is sinking. It's 87%, which is a big rounding error. And also 80% is nowhere in the main body of the paper. And I had to like go into the supplemental material and pull something out to find 87% from like an Excel sheet, right?
So you're just saying they made that number up.
Well, the number's in the paper, but it's referring to like how many major cities are experiencing sinking. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe somebody was in a rush and like maybe asked ChatGPT to summarize for them and then based their reporting on that. Because sometimes AI will like erroneously pull two things and put them together. A lot of the mistakes that you'll see about science papers are as simple as like missing a single word that can change the whole meaning, you know?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we're having less and less qualified science journalists actually writing these reports for the everyday person to understand what's happening, because that is also a skill. So we don't have that. We're having more AI summaries. So what are your tips for spotting these types of misrepresented scientific reports in media? Because it's usually not Scientific American. It's like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's like these random like headlines and you're just like, really, People magazine?
And like Scientific American's had some big layoffs, so.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So I know you have some extra practice with this because you're a teacher and you see a lot of AI reports coming from your students. Like, how do we know what we're reading is factually correct?
Yeah, well, I think kind of the best things to look for are sort of basic media literacy. And like, these are things that I also tell my students to look for if they're reading their own science news. So like, some things have to be basic. You know, you want to see the name of the journal and when it was published. A lot of the stories about this had the name of the journal wrong. It's published in Nature Cities, not published in Nature. So like, that's an error that tells me that there might be some like not very careful reporting going on.
Right.
It should mention, you know, who did the research. A lot of it referred to the research as being done by the journal Nature. Journals don't do research. They publish research. Research is done by universities and research institutes. It should have an interview with the author. And it should also have an interview, ideally, with a scientist who's not a part of the study too, because an author has a bit of like a conflict of interest, right? Like they think their research is great. They're probably going to tell you that it's great. And also some things are just like controversial. You know, you might stumble across a paper where it's like presented very definitively, but actually this is like a hotly debated thing. So you want to see like, is there somebody who did not get paid to do this research who looked at it and said, yeah, this is good research, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you mean like the scientific method? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Your own kind of like journalistic peer review.
Right.
And then lastly, like a lot of us encounter science journalism, not necessarily through reading news, but through social media, right?
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that gets shared on social media isn't actually journalism. It's press releases. And the press releases will come from places like prnewswire.com or from like Eureka Alert, which sounds kind of legit, or like they'll come from like a university news office. And so they have a .edu and it seems really official. And they can be really good. Like press releases, I know some phenomenal press officers who write really, really good press releases that are very accurate and like take into account caveats and studies. But like at the end of the day, they're being paid to make the university look good. Mm-hmm. And so they're not going to have that outside comment, right? They're not going to have that person not involved in the study saying, hey, this was really good, or like, hey, maybe there's some mistakes here.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, Erin, per usual, to like hang out with me and go through some science reporting. It's just so nice to hear that Portland isn't sinking into a hole. It's
not
nice.
Sinking into a hole. just normal sinking, normal smushing. You know, maybe if we didn't have an earthquake, we could like make this into a bigger deal. But I think, you know, just like do basic building maintenance. Like my house is 100 years old. It's already been sinking for 100 years. It'll probably sink for 100 more. My floors aren't even, but it's only an issue if I'm like trying to like make a table not wobble. So.
Oh, man. Well, before we wrap up, we've got a few shout outs from CityCast Portland neighbors. I don't know if you know about that, Erin, but that is like our membership. And one of the perks is that you can write in and give us shout outs and we'll shout out whatever you want.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So neighbor Jim T wants to shout out the Portland section of the American Chemical Society for serving chemists in a difficult time for scientists in America, which is very sweet.
Woo-hoo, I love that. Go ACS.
Yeah. Neighbor Nicole CL wants to shout out West Coast Diner on Lombard. They have a tasty breakfast and lunch every day, friendly owners and attentive staff. I know that's a little bit out of your neighborhood, Erin, but that's kind of close to mine. I've driven by it and I've wondered about it because we don't have many diners. We're just not a diner city, you know?
No, we're really not.
Yeah, we should be. All right. The neighbor Scott H wants to shout out Taqueria Las Palomas, a great place to get Mexican food. It's also connected to a wonderful little market. I looked that up because I was like, where? It's in the Mount Tabor neighborhood, if you're curious like me. And if you want to share your favorite local business or nonprofit on the pod, become a CityCast Portland neighbor. Send us your shout out. We'll read it right here on the pod. Erin, do you have a shout out while you're on here?
Oh, no. You put me on the spot.
No, it's okay if you don't have one.
I don't know. I want to shout out. There's like somebody who has been like just a neighbor. I don't know who they are, who has been clearing blackberries that have been like encroaching on some of the sidewalks. And like you, kind citizen, you are doing the world a huge favor. So thank you.
Aw, shout out to them.
Yeah.
Is it a goat? Do you think it's a goat?
I'm pretty sure they have 2 legs. Like, I think I've seen them with a weed whacker.
Oh,
but
never mind.
Goats do stand on 2 legs, so I can't rule it out.
Well, join today at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. Erin, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.